Welcome to another story in English that uses a high-level vocabulary. I chose some specific words that I wanted to include in the story, and then I sketched an outline with AI. After that, I wrote and edited the story carefully to make it sound like authentic American English. Make sure to read the subtitles as you listen so that you understand every word. Okay, I hope you enjoy today's story called The Box in the Woods. John sat by the window in his apartment and looked out at the gray street below. He was in a low mood because every day felt boring and depressing. He would get up in the morning and go to work, and then he would just come back and go to sleep at the end of the day. Nothing new or exciting came into his life until one Saturday morning when someone knocked on his door. It was his old colleague named Sarah. She waved and greeted him quickly. When John could tell she had something important to say, he paused for a moment and then said, "Is everything okay?" "Yes," she said, "but I had a strange encounter with an old woman on the street. She came out of the forest on the east side of town and talked to me. She asked if I knew you. I think she saw me come out of the post office where you used to work with me, so that's why she thought I might know you." John lifted his eyebrows. "She asked about me?" he said. "I wonder how she knew I used to work there. She must have been watching from the forest. What was her name, and what did she want?" "I forgot to ask for her name," said Sarah. "I was just so surprised to see an elderly woman make her way out of the forest to talk to me about something so specific. She actually knows quite a bit about you and needs your help." "That is so strange," John exclaimed. "What in the world does she need my help with?" Sarah replied, "She didn't tell me exactly, but she just said that you're the perfect person for what she needs." Sarah pulled a piece of paper out of her pocket that was ripped and dirty. She said, "Then the lady scribbled some information on this piece of paper and asked me to give it to you." John chuckled, but only a little. He grabbed the message from her and squinted his eyes to try to decipher the messy handwriting. It said, "If it is not a hassle for you, please come meet me this afternoon. Go east on First Street until you get to the forest edge. Then walk into the forest until you find my cabin." John shuffled his feet and thought for a moment. "What do you think is up with this?" he said. "I have no idea," said Sarah, "but she seemed friendly enough that I don't feel too concerned. I just don't know why she wouldn't give me more information. Also, it was a bit startling to be approached the way she popped out of the forest. It's up to you, John, and if you feel comfortable going, I could keep my cell phone handy if you run into any problems." John thought for a moment and then shrugged his shoulders and smiled. "You know," he said, "since my life is so painfully boring right now, I'm okay taking on this adventure. But I just really hope she's not like that witch that Hansel and Gretel met in the forest." Sarah laughed. "I think you're safe from that," she said. "I hope the best for you, and make sure to let me know if things start going south and you need the police." That afternoon, John packed his backpack with food and water, and he drove to the east side of town. He parked his car at a grocery store and walked toward the forest edge. Once he stepped through the thick foliage, he came to a trail. No one was on the trail, and spiderwebs draped over his path. The trees on both sides were tall and old, and their branches reached out of the trail like arms. The air smelled like fir trees and moist earth, and the dank autumn air felt cool on his face. He finally found the cabin tucked away in a dark corner. It was small and wooden. He knocked on the door, and it almost broke when he did so. No one answered. Then he noticed a small note on the ground facing him. It said, "Feel free to come on in if I'm not around." John hesitated for a moment, thinking about what to do. Then he mustered up the courage and slowly pushed the door open. It creaked loudly as he did so. "Hello there," he said as he opened it. "It's me, John. I got your message." He looked around the small room and saw that nobody was home. He smiled gently and said to himself, "Why am I scared? This actually looks like a cozy little dwelling." Then he noticed a jar on the table with a note that said to look inside. He opened the jar and found a map of the forest. John studied it carefully. He found his location on the map and then followed a dotted line to a place that looked like a clearing. It was marked with red and said, "This is where I need you." "Strange," he said to himself. Then he heard footsteps outside. A jolt of butterflies went through his stomach. He walked over and looked out the window, but it was just a fox scampering by. He then stepped outside and started making his way to the red spot on the map. The ground was soft under his boots. The deciduous maple and alder leaves fell slowly around him. After 10 minutes, he came to a clearing. It looked like a farmer's market, but it was old and run down. Old wooden stalls stood in rows, and on them were boxes, bags, and bottles covered in dust. Nobody was there. Everything looked like it had not been touched for years. John walked slowly between the stalls. He picked up a small bottle that had a red substance in it. "That's jelly from wild berries around here," said a voice. John jumped and spun around, and his heart started beating fast. An old woman stood at the edge of the clearing. She had white hair and wrinkles around her eyes. "Oh, hello there," said John. "Who are you?" "I'm the one who sent for you," she said. "Thanks for responding and coming out to help me. I didn't know if you would be nervous, but I know you like to take risks sometimes." John stared at her without answering for a moment. She explained that the marketplace had belonged to her family for generations. It was a privilege to run it. It was a place where people from the village came to buy natural medicines and foods from the forest. But 5 years ago, someone had stolen a valuable box from one of the stalls. Without it, the market could not continue. "What was in the box?" John asked. "Seeds," she said. "They were rare seeds, and they were the only viable ones left that we know of in this whole forest. Without them, we could not make the medicine we sell here. We made most of our money selling the medicine here, and it helped many people in the village who were sick." John looked around the old stalls. "So, are you thinking the box of seeds is still around?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I remember the day when someone stole the box and ran with it. But he got caught by the police as he entered the village. When the police arrested him, he was not holding the box. They asked him where it was, but he would not tell them. Therefore, it must be hidden somewhere between here and the village." John began to search. He tried to imagine himself stealing the box and running with it, and he followed overgrown paths in the woods for hours. He started looking for old trees with hollow trunks, and sure enough, he eventually uncovered an old box in the hollow of an old tree. He took it back to the cabin where she was resting and showed it to her. She opened the box and found small, dark seeds in a cloth bag. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "This is it. And the seeds still seem plump and viable as far as I can tell." She looked at John with a warm smile. The thief must have hidden it there as he ran to the village since he heard the police coming for him. "I'm glad it was okay," said John. "I was sure it would be in some place like that, but I didn't know it would still be in such good condition." They sat together at a small table in her cabin and drank tea. "Now I can grow the plants to make the medicine again," she said. "It will help many people in the area, and it will help the old family business finally thrive again. And this time, I'm going to propagate quite a few extra plants and replant them in their native habitat." John thoroughly enjoyed his time with the elderly woman and had no more fear of what was happening. Then he finally asked how she knew about him and knew so much about him. She smiled and said, "Sometimes people just know things around here." Outside, the forest was bright in the afternoon light. The trees stood tall and still, and John walked back to his car feeling something he had not felt for a long time. He felt a sense of joy and accomplishment. He drove home slowly and gazed upon the colorful, deciduous forest along the road, already thinking about the next time he might come back to see the market in the woods with the locally made medicine. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed today's story. You can download the transcript below to read if you'd like. Some difficult words were used today, so make sure to look up any words you don't know. And finally, if you have specific words you would like me to include in the next story, feel free to type them in the comments below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.